Okay, hello, I'm Nicholas. It's Tuesday. Let's begin. Today I'm going to be talking about what it says in the title, what I'm reading as an MFA graduate. This isn't an exhaustive list by any means, but it is a good few samples, a selection of things that I'm actively reading right now. Come on. Yeah, come on. I've got a guest with me today. Since my MFA is in creative writing, I spend more of my time writing than reading, but I really have been trying to do the reverse of that lately. I think that I really need to read more in order to help encourage me to write more often. I found that I've kind of went into a slump. After I finished my degree and before I started up teaching, I was at an in-between. I wasn't reading or writing. And while I've picked up on writing a little bit more in my free time, I still want to read to encourage that continuation, to encourage me to keep doing what I was doing. I have a list here and it is by no means exhaustive. These are some of the things I'm reading right now. Some of them are going to be shelved and picked back up later, and some of them may end up being, DNF'd. The first book on my list, and the one I'm currently reading, is Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers. I picked it up in my February Book of the Month box, and I've really enjoyed it so far. It's one that I've set another book aside for because I really appreciate the perspective. It's one that some of us can relate to, me particularly, in terms of that finishing of higher education and trying to land on your feet, figuring out where you're going to go. But there's also perspectives in here that I can't quite relate to, right? It's written by a strong Black female protagonist, which is something that I personally cannot relate to, but really want to learn more about, really want to read through. I think reading and learning about those perspectives and learning through those perspectives are really useful. And it's something that I'm collecting more and more with the books I pick up. This is definitely my current spare time read, and I'm hoping to finish it relatively soon so I can continue on to a few of the other books that I have, but it is one that I'm really enjoying and one that I'm hoping to keep up with right now. Another book that I bought for the February box was Circe by Madeline Miller. It was the 2018 Book of the Year, so it's a bit older now, but I bought it for my partner because she really enjoys that time period, and I don't really know a lot about it. I had to do a little teaching of it earlier in the year, but I still would like to learn a little bit more, and I really want to learn it from a female perspective, from a perspective that you don't hear quite as much, especially in older mythology. That's something that I'm really trying to do, is add more diversity into my bookcase, and my partner really helps me to do that by finding even more books that I might not have seen myself. I definitely look forward to reading this one, though I think she's going to get through it first and I have a few other books that I have to read, but I do plan to come back to this one hopefully soon. I also have two more Book of the Month books, one from December, one from January. They've both currently been shelved, but that is The Office of Historical Corrections by Danielle Evans and Outlawed by Anna North. I think that they're both interesting and I started both of them, but I have put them to the side because I want to read something a little bit different than that right now, and I think that I found that in Honey Girl specifically, especially from that Book of the Month category. Next up is The Collected Poems of W.B. Yeats. It's a much different read, but I have read some of his early love poems, and I thought that the way he writes was really pretty and really nice, and I want to continue working on poetry, which is something that I used to do a lot more of and want to sort of get back into, is the writing of poetry. So, the only way to really do that is to continue reading it. And for me, I think a good selection of poetry are usually those collected works. Not always, but often you can find the author's, whole catalog of writing, and you get to see the different shifts they took as they were writing, the more professional they became or the less, depending on who they are. With anything old like this, you really have to take into account who the author is, and you have to think about the time frame they were writing in. We probably don't agree with everything that they said back then, and their perspectives, their opinions, their ideas on many pieces of society are very different and often really flawed. And I think that a lot of his poems really speak to the beautifulness of nature and of the world, and that's something I'm really trying to get in, especially in these times, just trying to take in more of the world than I actually can physically. Next is a very different book, Gender Trouble by Judith Butler. Obviously one of the big pinnacle writers of feminism and queer theory, because one of my goals in 2021 is to read more literature by those diverse populations, and I think that takes into account many different types of writing. And in adding diversity, I think it really does require both the reading through, fiction and general literature, but also through essays, through memoir, through people telling you very specific, heavy stories, and sometimes just giving you a better understanding of things you think you might know. Probably even more different than that last book is The Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco. This is a book that comes from an Italian author, similar to Italo Calvino, who I studied really heavily for my master's thesis. It's a work that lives within postmodern fiction, trying to write past the boundaries of normal or regular literature. And I really enjoy that. It's something I try to do with my own writing, and it's something that I've done in the past, but I also want to keep doing that. What this book is good for, and what a few other books are good for that I have specifically, is to learn, right? All of them will teach you in certain ways. Some is to learn, things in life. Sometimes it's to learn for writing. Specifically, this is to learn for writing. Similar to this, I also just recently picked up Deacon King Kong by James McBride, and that's going to be another book with really, really good writing, good story, good plot, actually good sentences, put together really strongly, and that will hopefully help me in writing my own prose. I focus on an in-between, but when you want to really write good prose, you have to read good prose, and that's the goal. There are also two other books that I'm reading on my Kindle, the only two I have on there. The first is Barack Obama's memoir, A Promised Land. I'm about a quarter into that, and I'm still going. That's sort of my nighttime read. And then I also have The Best American Poetry of 2020, a collection of writing of different sort of poetry. It's on a different scale than looking at someone's whole collected work, and is instead more focused on collecting what's really present and contemporary. I think that the poems are something that I work through occasionally on the side. The memoir is something that I'm actually actively reading and using as, inspiration really to get out there and, go and do more with my time and with the spare time that I do have to try and, activate myself and start doing more, start engaging with more things online, in print form, and etc. And that's about it. There's obviously many more books in my ever-growing bookcase, but those are what I'm reading right now. Those are the things I plan on reading next. It's a wide variety, but that's what I like to engage with. I'm hoping to create more videos about those books and other books to keep myself going, keep myself reading, and keep myself accountable. I also want to remember what I thought of them. Sometimes it's nice for me to go back and be able to find a review, and I think in video form it'll be even easier. If you enjoyed the idea of any of these books or have read them yourself, let me know and stick around. I hope to keep this up and share as I go. Bye for now. I'll see you on another Tuesday.